Egyptian journalist Mona Eltahawy. She joins us from New York to discuss the changes that are underway in the Arab world. And Mona, first of all, I want to just point out here, these images you're seeing of Yemeni women defiantly burning, torching these traditional veils. Give us the significance of this act here in a pretty conservative Islamic country.
Right. I think there are many levels to this story, Suzanne. It's important, first of all, to remember just how many Yemeni women have taken part in the revolution that's been going on now for an amazing 8 months against Ali Abdullah Saleh. Secondly, these women were demonstrating not so much the veil itself, they were demonstrating the violence that the Ali Abdullah Saleh regime has unleashed on them. And they're calling it, it's a tribal practice to say that we reject this violence and we demand protection against this violence. And thirdly, I think it's also a reminder of the central role women play in Yemen that we saw recognized by the Nobel Prize Committee when it awarded Tawakkul Karaman, a Yemeni female journalist, its Nobel Peace Prize.
And Mona, you used to wear a headscarf in Egypt when you were younger. Can you explain to folks the importance of this act behind this? What does it mean? Is it a symbolic thing that they are burning these veils?
It's a symbolic tribal practice to burn your veil as a woman, as a way to protest violence and as a way to demand protection from the menfolk around you. Now, these women in Yemen clearly haven't needed protection for a long time because they've been very involved in their revolution. But over the past few months, the Ali Abdullah Saleh regime has particularly targeted women and children as a way to discourage them from joining the protests in the streets. And the women have defiantly objected by continuing their protests. So this symbolic burning of the veil is not to say we reject the veil, but to say that we reject this violence and we demand an end to the violence.
And Mona, all this ceasefire that the government has called for in Yemen, many protesters on the ground see that as a joke because they are still people being killed and being injured. What do you suppose needs to happen to turn this thing around?
Well, clearly what needs to happen is Ali Abdullah Saleh must step down. This is what people have been calling for the past 8 months. He has very little credibility with these hundreds of thousands of protesters who've been on the streets for 8 months now. They don't believe anything he says. Every time he talks about a ceasefire, or even more importantly, every time he talks about stepping down according to a deal that's been put together to help him escape immunity, people laugh because they don't trust him anymore.
And real quick, let's turn here the corner to Libya. Many celebrated the fact that Muammar Gaddafi was killed, but Human Rights Watch has made an alarming discovery recently. They're discovering mass graves, revealing that there are dozens of revenge killings on both sides from the supporters and haters of Gaddafi. Are you concerned about what is happening in Libya here?
Right. I think what's the most important thing to happen in Libya, or what must happen in Libya, is a recognition that a new and free Libya, a Libya free of Gaddafi, must be based on justice and not revenge. Unfortunately, these cases that have come to light through human rights organizations and through journalists must signal to Libyans that in order to build a country that's better than the one that Gaddafi left behind for them, they must stress the values of justice and not vengeance. And they must investigate all of these cases, because just as we condemn the human rights violations that Gaddafi unleashed on them for 42 years, we must also call for justice and a respect for human rights in a new Libya.
All right, Mona Eltahawy, good to see you, Mona. Thanks again.